I hope it will be resolved this fall and this spring, but it might not, number one. Secondly, I think there'll be some remaining issues left over even afterwards, issues that state government may have to fill in. I'll give you one example. There are a lot of people in Michigan that want to start their own businesses. They're kind of entrepreneurs. They're independent contractors. And right now, going on the individual insurance marketplace is the most expensive. And so right now, Blue Cross, frankly, is trying to pass legislation to raise the cost for individual marketplace. I think that's fundamentally wrong. What I think we need to do, I think state government, since it oversees Blue Cross, we need to have some conversations with them and other insurance companies. And if we're successful in passing Obama's plan, which essentially is creating a new public insurance option, we need to work with the public insurance option as well as the private insurance to come up with more inexpensive but quality health insurance for small business and for the independent contractors and the entrepreneurs that want to set up shop in their home, for instance. You know, a lot of people have laid off from work. They're coming up with creative ideas to start their own businesses. And I think a lot of times good ideas come from that. But if they can't get insurance, it's hard to maintain that kind of a independent entity. So that's just one example. Another example is, and maybe Obama will tackle this, but it's unclear. One of the reasons why, in my analysis, healthcare is so expensive in Michigan is that you go into a doctor's office and they have to have all these clerical workers to process all these different forms for all these different insurance companies when you file a claim. You know, I'm also an attorney, though I'm not practicing right now. And all lawyers in Michigan, no matter where you live, you are required to use the same set of forms when you deal with the court system in Michigan. I think we need to try and have a uniform set of forms that all insurance companies agree to use when processing claims. Now, this might become a national part of the national legislation, but it might not be, because it's a fairly minor thing in the big scheme of things, but it still is important. I think something we could do at a state level. And finally, the last thing is that, you know, the health insurance industry covers a whole lot of turf. You have health insurance coverage issues, you have health care access issues, and one of the problems is that if you live in the rural part of Michigan, getting access to doctors is challenging, because a lot of doctors don't like to locate rural areas because there's not as many people there. And yet we need to support our friends in northern Michigan and the rural areas, so we may have to come up with creative state solutions or strategies to try and get access to health care in the rural parts of Michigan, as well as, frankly, some parts of, for instance, downtown Detroit. A lot of the hospitals that have moved out to the suburbs, so folks living in Detroit are having a problem getting access to health care as well.
Did you beat Bouchard in Oakland County?
Michael Bouchard and I go back a long ways. He was in the Senate when I was in the House, and we actually worked together on a critical issue in Madison Heights, you know, the incinerator issue. So the answer is, I don't know. I mean, but I think I can, because number one, Oakland County went for Obama. Oakland County's been going Democratic. But most importantly, it doesn't matter whether Michael Bouchard or Mike Cox or, you know, Terry Lynn Land. The Republicans, you can look what's happening nationally. The Republicans are not being part of the solution to getting this country's economy going again. All the Republicans in Michigan voted against the stimulus bill. The standard Republican philosophy for just about anything is a tax cut. And the tax cut philosophy has proven to be incredibly ineffective. You know, we need to invest in the institutions in Michigan that will help promote economic growth. And so if we cut, we're not going to be able to modernize our schools, fix our roads, you know, promote broadband internet. And so the Republican philosophy, the American people, the Michigan people know is very ineffective. So yes, if I win the nomination for the primary, I feel extremely confident I will win. because the Democrats understand what it takes to improve our economy, and we're going to execute a plan. And my track record, as Gary was talking about, is, you know, I directed the minimum wage campaign. I directed a large union organizing drive for the Service Employees International Union, and I've been doing this healthcare work. So I know how to execute political plans to make improvements.
Third thing is you can call me Jim.
Excuse me.
You can call me James, you can call me Jim, it's okay.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. What's your first name?
Rosemary. I have a lot of clients that are self-employed. I've been self-employed myself for 35 years.
What kind of work do you do?
Taxes and accounting. Many of my clients had great ideas to start small companies, just like you had mentioned. And one of the reasons they went out of business or could not attract employees is because of health insurance.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's going to work, even with a low-cost health insurance. That has to be paid for them, like the other people at auto companies and teachers and public employees have theirs given to them, whereas self-employed people and their employees have to pay it out of their pocket.
Right. Now,
what's the solution?
The solution is, somewhat going back to what Jim was saying, is that one of Obama's ideas, and it's frankly one of the key principles of Healthcare for America Now, which is the organization I work for. I mentioned it a minute ago, the public insurance option. There's 47, and I heard say on the radio, 50 million Americans without health insurance. And in Michigan, it's 1.3 at minimally. It's probably going to dramatically go up with all the people being laid off and they're losing insurance and they can't afford COBRA.
Right.
And so we need to create this public insurance option, whether it's on a national scale or maybe we create something on a state level where people can become part of a larger pool.
Yeah.
If we create a large pool of people that are paying in, and then more people, the rates will come down in terms of what it will cost to pay in. And so small business and entrepreneurs could pay a very modest rate in and get a decent package. The other thing about the public insurance option that's critical to understand is that the administrative costs, and we're using Medicare as a metaphor, as a comparison, because that and the Veterans Administration are the two public insurance options that are in existence right now. When you compare Medicare, what it costs to administer Medicare, it's like 3 cents on every dollar is the overhead. Whereas in the private sector, it ranges from 20 cents to 40 cents on every dollar. And this is a statistic that I didn't come up with, but General Motors came up with. They put out a booklet a few years ago about health insurance, and they said that private sector insurance is so inefficient and there's so much waste in it, and the perfect example, of course, is the high administrative costs. The other advantage with public insurance is that there's not an additional profit tacked onto it like there is in the private sector. Because private sector insurance companies, they have stockholders and they pay tremendously high salaries for their CEOs. So with the public insurance option, there's no additional profit charge tacked on, and the people who are overseeing the program are not making extravagant salaries. The point is this, is that when you have a much more efficient system, it will cost much less in terms of premiums, and you can still get a quality package. So that kind of a structure or system that I think that small business and entrepreneurs can buy into and be reasonable and affordable.
Well, my point is, I have a lot of small businesses, and their employees are making minimum wage. The employer themselves, in many cases, get nothing. They will work days and days and days or months without a pay at all. How did they get health insurance?
Well, there's a fair number of low-wage workers that are in that same boat. I mean, when I did the SEIU home care organizing drive, home care workers were considered independent contractors prior to their being organized, and they were being made minimum. And now they've got a bump up in wages. But, you know, I think there's enough of these low-wage workers that if we can pool them, again, I think this can work. Now, you know, the proof will be in the pudding, of course. The bottom line is that we got to pool these folks together, and we got to create a package that meets their needs as well as meet the costs. And again, I have a lot of belief that if you have a much more efficient system, and you strip away the profit element, and you're not paying high salaries, then I think we can come up with a package. Now, it may not be, I won't even use the phrase the Cadillac of insurance plans. It may not even be a Chevrolet, but maybe it's just a nice starter package. The key thing is that the healthcare system is dysfunctional in this country, and there's a lot of people who frankly remain in their jobs even though they're not happy and they would like to change jobs, but they can't because they have health care. And we need to make health insurance also portable, because that way people will do what they really want to do, which will make them most happy. And right now there's a whole lot of people that feel stuck because of health care. So we need to fundamentally reach to change it in order to save money and help both employers as well as unions be able to carry on and represent their employees and workers. It's a good question, though.
Piggyback on that for a
Sure.
minute. Today in the paper I read, and it's Baucus and a few others that are saying, oh, well, we're going to have to work out some kind of compromise on this. And they keep dropping the word public out of the option thing, and they talk about cooperatives and, there'll be nonprofit cooperatives, maybe. And it seems like we're bargaining our own selves down in the Democratic Party in order to get bipartisan support. And I'm wondering how sincere Obama is to the commitment to have a public health option.
Well, it's a great question. A lot of things happen today, and let me tell you what happened today. Obama went to Green Bay, Wisconsin, for a town hall meeting, and once again he stated, for the record, on TV, on the radio, that he's absolutely in support of a public insurance option. Number one. Two, Harry Reid came out today and says he fully supports a public insurance option. Nancy Pelosi came out, I think it was yesterday, saying that no bill is going to reach the House of Representatives floor that doesn't have a public insurance option as a part of it. And the House is great, because Henry Waxman, as well as John Dingell, oh, by the way, let's go off on a quick tangent. I read yesterday that the bill that's going to come out of the House is going to be named after John Dingell. Henry Waxman took over as chair of Energy and Commerce. He kind of did a little mutiny and took over for Dingell. But he's giving Dingell the proper respect by naming the bill after him, because he's been advocating health care reform ever since he's been in Congress, but also from his dad, who was advocating health care reform. So I think that's a real nice thing that Henry Waxman is doing. George Miller heads up the Education and Labor Committee in the House from California. He supports the public insurance option. Charlie Rangel heads up Ways and Means. He supports the public insurance option. Now, you hit the nail right on the head. There are two committees in the Senate. Ted Kennedy's committee, which is the Education and Labor Committee, Kennedy is on board with a public insurance option. Now, it's a little controversial right now because part of Kennedy's bill was released today, and there are gaps in the bill. And there are two gaps: how to pay for his proposal, and then the public insurance option isn't in there. But tomorrow or the next day, the second part of his bill is supposed to be released, which is supposed to have those elements in there. So, that's it. So I'm very confident that Kennedy is going to be on board. Now, the Senate Finance Committee is the other critical committee that's on board. Now, Debbie Stabenow, our senators, is on this Senate Finance Committee, and she's fully on board with a public insurance option. Same with Carl Levin. In fact, those two signed a letter that the senator from Ohio, Sherrod Brown, publicly released. I think there was like at least 43 U.S. senators signed a letter saying they support the public insurance option. So our two senators are on board, but we're going to Washington on June 25th to lobby, and our mission is going to be to get Debbie not only to keep supporting it, but also to put gentle pressure on Baucus to support it. Because the problem with Baucus is that he likes to do things with his Republican counterpart. His name is Charles Grassley from Iowa. And Grassley is a Republican, and the Republicans are coming out against the public insurance option because the Republican Party gets bankrolled by the insurance industry. So this is where it's the public insurance option is the critical issue in the healthcare reform. But to get back to your question, Obama's fully on board, and all the Democratic leadership is on board. Now, something else happened today. Mary Landrieu from Louisiana, who earlier publicly endorsed the public insurance option, today said, oh, no, I never said I supported it. She is being roundly beat up because she's a flip-flopper. And my organization is going to put some pressure on her to do the right thing. Now, two other quick factors. This is important because this is the most important issue that Obama's going to, this important issue this year. Two other things have occurred that you should know about is that the U.S. Senate passed a very special motion about 6 weeks ago. It's called budget reconciliation. As you all know, for any policy bill to pass the U.S. Senate, you have to get 60 votes. The 60 votes is the point where debate gets cut off, and then they schedule a vote. And if you don't have 60 votes, then the minority party can filibuster. You've heard that expression. You know, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, the old Jimmy Stewart movie. He stopped the bill from going through because the majority party didn't have 60 votes, so Jimmy Stewart basically read the Bible and read the dictionary. But the 60-vote rule does not apply to budget matters. That's the one exception. Now then, the budget reconciliation process can be used in special circumstances for policy matters if it's related to budget matters. And so there was a vote taken about 6 weeks ago to apply the budget reconciliation process to health care. And it was supported and passed by the Democrats and the Senate. Now, the Republicans were opposed to it. So what this means is that when the final bill hits the U.S. Senate, you're not going to need 60 votes to close off debate. You're only going to need 50, one more than half. And so the chances of actually passing health care legislation is the greatest it's ever been in probably the history of this country because of this interesting motion that we have. So we can afford to lose some Democrats and still win national health care reform. And, Baucus is a little bit weak, but I think the other critical factor that distinguishes this time from when Clinton attempted to pass health care reform is that now we've got a very strong grassroots presence all around the country. The organization I work for, we have built up this incredible coalition of 1,000 different organizations across the country, including the AFL-CIO, the UAW, the Teamsters, all the major unions, SEIU, ASME. We have faith-based organizations, Gamilio, Moses, they're all a part of it. We have community organizations, Citizen Action, Acorn's a part of it. We've got provider medical organizations, the progressive ones. And then we also have other organizations that are out there that, civil rights organizations, the NAACP is on board, the Hispanic organizations are on board. So we have this national grassroots movement, and they're providing political support for members of Congress to do the right thing. And this is entirely different than what happened when Bill Clinton was president. And then, of course, the final difference is we've got the most amazing president that we have ever elected in my lifetime. We got a guy that not only gets it in terms of understanding the issues, he understands how to build political support for this. And the fact that he went out to Green Bay today, he's using the bully pulpit to arouse the American people, because you look at any national poll, the American people want health care reform for the exact reason that Rosemary talked about, that there's a whole lot of low-wage workers, small businesses that need health care reform and can't get it, and everything else. So a long answer to a very good question. Others? Okay.
Well, Blue Cross has a nonprofit status, but yet the CEOs are bringing home fabulous salaries. And I know Geithner said that they're not concerned about setting salary caps for executives, but...
It's not entirely true. When I was driving up here, I was hearing a story on NPR that they've appointed this new guy named Ken Feinstein that has been appointed by the secretary to oversee the salaries for all the companies that got federal TARP dollars.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so there is some work going on there. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, to get that nonprofit status, shouldn't there be like a cap? Like if you make $7 million, that can't exactly be nonprofit. You know what I'm saying? Whereas if he was making $800,000 or something, more reasonable.
No, Danny didn't make $800,000. He made $1.8 million.
$1.8 million.
Yeah. I mean, we're all family here, right?
But we're not. Yeah.
Blue Cross is a really difficult problem in this state because they are called the insurer of last resort. They are nonprofit. They don't pay state taxes, and yet, you know, they're acting like
a profit,
like any other major private insurer. And the problem is, if you look at the board of directors of Blue Cross, there are lots of our friends that are on the board. I mean, a lot of unions, a lot of, you know, organizations. And Blue Cross pays each of those board members, except for the UAW, because they have a constitution, they have a section in the Constitution where they can't take compensation for being on the board. But all the other people, they're making $45,000 a year for attending maybe 4 or 5 meetings. And so I personally think that that's a major conflict of interest if you're making that kind of money and you're trying to oversee a company. The other thing Blue Cross has done is that they have a different wing of the organization where they are for-profit. They bought the accident fund, which was a special fund that provided workers cheap, more inexpensive workers' comp coverage that used to be a part of the state of Michigan. It was then spun off under John Engler, and then Blue Cross bought it. So part of their wing is nonprofit, and part of it isn't. And the question is, are they moving money around from the nonprofit side to the for-profit side? And last year, of course, they tried to enact 4 different bills which would have really raised the rates for the individual marketplace, because Blue Cross realizes is that there's a lot more people leaving, you know, the work pool from large employers are getting insurance as individuals, and they say they're losing money hand over fist, so they have to raise the rates. But meanwhile, as you appropriately point out, if they're losing so much money, why are they paying their top executives a ton of money? And then they laid off 1,000, they're announcing layoffs of 1,000 people, and then they also gave out bonuses to all their top execs. So, you know, there's a lot of I think Blue Cross has gone off on the wrong track.
I had Blue Cross.
We all do.
And I've reached $35 in 1 year.
Right.
They want to increase it again.
And isn't it kind of ironic that they're paying Ernie Harwell to do all those ads on the radio saying how wonderful Blue Cross is? You know, so it's a difficult situation. And I think we're going to need to have a very strong governor to take on Blue Cross. And frankly, right now, the Democrats aren't. It's been, frankly, Mike Cox and Tom George have been doing more of it than our side. Yes.
I told you what my son does for a living.
Sells insurance.
Yes. There's 20,000 of him in the state. They're going to sell into the private sector. On a Blue Cross policy, they only get paid 4.5%. That's their commission. If they sell for American Community, as an example, the commission is 15 to 20. Okay. We always felt better selling Blue Cross than we did selling American Community, because the acceptance and, you know, it's recognized, they know how to handle claims, it goes much easier, much smoother, and they don't nitpick you for pre-existing conditions. You know, they don't. Not like a commercial insurer.
Well, that may be true, but as I recall...
I had American Community throw out a claim because the guy had acne.
No, I totally believe that, but as I recall, part of the bill, one of the bills last year, that if someone joined, it would expand the period of time that Blue Cross would not pay for a pre-existing
Yeah, they
condition.
want to get away from the community rating system that
Right.
they've been using and go to an age-rated system and get a 6 to 12-month exclusion on pre-existing. That's what they're looking for.
That's what you're
I
right.
understand that. I just want to ask you, are you going to protect my son's nickel so he can keep working?
Insurance is important. We need people to sell insurance, and we need people like your son and yourself who conduct yourselves with integrity. Your son isn't making $1.8 million a year.
No.
Your son isn't laying off 1,000 people. And so my point is that Blue Cross historically in this state has served a very special purpose. I mean, there's a reason why the Blue Cross network came into existence in this country, because it was initially a way that working folks could pay regular amounts of money on a monthly basis so that when they got sick, they would be able to get the care they needed. There's a wonderful book out. It's called Sick. It's by Jonathan Cohn, C-O-H-N, that I read last year. He's a reporter for the New Republic, and he actually lives in Ann Arbor. And it basically traces the whole, medical establishment from like 1930s on. And there's a very interesting series of chapters on how insurance companies came into existence. And so the insurance industry came into existence for very honorable purposes. And what I'm just saying is that I think we need to get Blue Cross to do the right thing as a corporate entity, just like I think you and your son are doing the right thing by feeling good about selling insurance at 4.5% versus the 20%, and the fact that Blue Cross isn't weeding everybody out like the private sector is. And the other thing too is that, you correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of my understanding of insurance agents is that they're really pillars of a lot of the small communities around this state. And I think that's very important in terms of a sense of community. And we need to maintain.
Companies don't understand that people buy insurance from the person who sells it, not the company.
That's right.
The companies are still trying to get rid of the insurance agent, trying to find a way to get the insurance to the public, bypassing the insurance agent. They've been trying to do that since I went into the business back in 1966 and retired in 2002. Okay, so they keep losing, but they keep trying.
Right.